Basement Jesus, y'all.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Brothers in the Basement podcast. I'm your co-host, Bryon Wiebold, along with Steve Crosby, Dr. Steve Crosby. We got a full-blown Texas edition today. We got two brothers in Texas, and I'm actually in Wilmington, North Carolina.
I used to live there. Nice place.
I know you did.
Yeah.
I thought about you.
Yeah.
But welcome back, everybody. We're going to dive in deep with another brother, and I'm going to throw it over to Steve because this is Steve's fault. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, it is. I'm not responsible for him, but I'm responsible for having him on.
Yeah.
We met David about 3 years ago or so through the Brothers in the Basement podcast, number one, and a mutual friend in Don Atkin, who's since passed on.
Mm-hmm.
Gotten to know David very well and spent some time with him last month and got to hear his story, which was pretty interesting. As you can see, we're both silver-haired foxes. We've been around a few mountains. And as I listened to David's story, so many similarities. You know, we've chased the same goose around the same mountain just to find that goose doesn't lay any eggs.
Yeah.
Right. And he has a, frankly, fascinating life story. And today I've just asked him to share one element. And we even talked about it when we were together. We want to talk about today. I'm just going to let David share a small slice. Let me go here. I'll set David up. Look, David has done the whole ministry routine like many of us have. Born in a Christian family, the whole journey, pastored numerous places, knows all the church drama, all the crazy that's out there, the good, the things that were good, the things that were very not so good. So David has punched the same ticket as so many of us. The details have changed, but the story is still the same.
Awesome.
There was one part of David's story that really grabbed me. I got a little emotional. I'm getting emotional now even thinking about it. And it has to do with ego. And I want to encourage anybody who might be listening and watching this time, you know, we're going to be talking in like a ministry context because that's our universe. But what David experienced applies to anybody, any place, any time, any endeavor. There's a lesson that every follower of Jesus is going to have to learn. And I think David can give me an amen already. We can learn the easy way. Or we can learn the hard way.
All right. So, Dr. Crosby, before we begin this deep dive into ego, why don't you just frame it out with a definition?
Yeah, it's really important.
We're talking about.
Few things are more screwed up in Christianity than the death to self message. When we say ego, we are not talking about selfhood and personhood that makes you the unique human being and beloved vessel of creation that you are. Ego is that thing in us that wants to act independently and without consideration for Father's intent for us. None of us wake up in the morning unless we're pathological and say, oh, how many different ways can I disobey today?
Right. Yeah.
But there is, particularly in ministry-driven guys, but it's not limited to the assumption that all our motives are pure, and we think they're pure, and we're sincere until we really run into Jesus at the cross, and that's normally a major revelation and often a life-altering moment. And if you're not in ministry, I don't care what endeavor you're in, it's going to show. This might be sexist, but I think in general, males of all types, you know, want to succeed. You know, you're driven to achieve and be significant and successful and all that. And we just sanitize it all because we're doing it for Jesus. Well, there was a paragraph, a chapter in David's life that almost literally cost his life. And he learned a costly lesson. And I've asked him to come on and share it today. So, David, maybe if you could kind of ease into that portion of the story, set it up for the folks, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. The afternoon of May 25th, 1995, I woke up in hell. It looked and sounded like an ICU unit in a hospital in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. But it was hell. And I got there not because of a car accident or not because of any other thing that was outside of me. I got there because of the choices that I'd made and the choices that I hadn't made over an extended period of time. I was culturally and religiously conditioned to tune out anything that conflicted with my own point of view
Right.
about virtually everything.
That's a
Well,
mouthful, my brother. How old were you at that time?
It was about 2 months from turning 40, so I was just
Okay.
about 40 years
And
old.
what was
And by that time, you'd had some water under the bridge too, like ministry water
I've
under
been
the bridge.
involved.
lost
I've been
water.
involved
Okay.
in various aspects of ministry. Starting, my first ministry opportunity was I was the bus ministry director at the church that I was attending after I met Jesus. And 20 years later, I'm waking up in an ICU in Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
And Bryon, you were going to say something?
Go ahead.
Yeah, David, what was your particular brand of religion, Christianity?
I was a mutt. You know,
Yeah.
I was born and raised in a fundamentalist Pentecostal church.
Right.
Never did really buy into it. I just was there as long as I had to be there.
Sure.
Radically met Jesus when I was 19. Encountered the reality of Christ in my life. It wasn't like anything that I'd ever seen before.
Yeah.
It was on the sort of in 1974, sort of on the tail end of the Jesus movement that was happening in Central Florida, which is where I grew up.
Yeah, same thing here.
And the church that I was drawn into was a Southern Baptist church. So my first large chunk of ministry experience and Bible training and those kinds of things was Southern Baptist.
And
Good
where
people.
were you when you were in the hospital room? Like what
I-
universe were you in?
I was in a apostolic network that was based there in Pennsylvania. Guys that you and I both know.
Yeah, you know him, Bryon.
Don was
Yeah.
there, and another guy that was sort of the leader. I won't really mention his name right now, but no need to. They weren't bad people. They were good people. They had drawn me there to help. They had a lot of, you know what, in that kind of gathering, there's typically a lot of apostolic people who want to be apostles, and there's a lot of prophetic people who want to be prophets, but there's very few pastoral people. And I'm that guy cut out of the pastoral.
So what got you the condition to be in the ICU?
Stupidity, I think, is probably the best way to describe it.
We're laughing because we don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, really, of course.
Yeah. We matured past that level.
You really, well, that's good. Blessings. You can pray for me after this is over because I'm still struggling with it. I had been trained to ignore things that conflicted with my point of view and been sick for several months, coughing and hacking. And I thought, well, it's chest cold. And then I thought, well, maybe it's bronchitis. And then I started coughing up phlegm. My wife was regularly saying to me, David, you need to go to the doctor. Okay, man, no, you need to go to the doctor. And I got tired of listening to it, so I'd go do something else. Well, she was recommending medical treatment, and I decided I was going to go with Tylenol and NyQuil. And that was going to get me through this. Eventually, I'll kick it because I've always kicked it before. And until the fever came. And this had been going on for weeks, 2 months, 2.5 months. And the fever came, and I couldn't argue with the fever. And she said, you've got to go. Well, this was like a Friday. And I said, if I still have the fever on Monday, I'll go to the doctor. And I'd take some Tylenol and it would back off and then it would come back. And I did that over the weekend. And Monday morning I woke up and the fever was just really strong, 102, 103. And I said, okay. So we started calling. Couldn't find a doctor that was taking new patients. A little town in Pennsylvania there on Pennsylvania Turnpike. Finally, we found the next day a doc in a box. It was a walk-in clinic kind of place. No appointment needed. So we made arrangements to go up there the next day, which was a Wednesday. Went up there and they kept me. I think I'm going to get some shots for bronchitis or something. Give me some antibiotics. And the doctor said, no, we're going to keep you. And I said, well, I've been sicker than this. And he was starting to walk away from me, and he stopped and he turned and he looked back and he leaned in and he said, I highly doubt that.
Just what you want to hear from the doctor.
Yeah. So long story short, I had a massive infection in my left lung and called an anaerobic abscess. It's an abscess of bacterial stuff within your body that doesn't need oxygen to exist. And they opened me up from the middle of my chest around to my back on Thursday, I think it was. And I woke up in hell that afternoon. Airway tube in your mouth and beeping and stuff. And I'm hearing this wailing and crying. It was a woman in the next cubicle over. At this place, they had curtains in between the different sections in ICU, not the individual rooms like they often have now. Of course, this was 30 years ago. And I heard an elderly woman dying, the death throes of an elderly woman. And I heard it off and on as I would drift in and out of sleep. And the morphine-induced fuzziness was very active, and it was terrible. They took the tube out. My wife came in a little bit later, and it hit me that sorry about this. This happened when you and I talked as well, but I had nearly widowed my wife and orphaned my kids.
Can we pause on that thought for a minute?
Sure.
How significant a comment that is. When we are consumed with ourselves, even consciously or unconsciously. I just think that's such a profound statement, David. My male ego,
Yes.
whatever,
Yes.
nearly widowed my beloved. That should be a sobering thought for any man listening to this today.
I thought I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. So
That's what's so nefarious, isn't it?
was it a spiritual belief? It's for healing. I mean, God's man of faith and power, or are you just that obstinate and hard-headed?
It was a little more than a touch of that, but it was less of that and more of, I'm the man of the house, I'm the priest of the home, the husband is the head, and that kind of distorted understanding of what Christ-driven leadership looks like. I wasn't driven by agape. I wasn't driven by caring for and bringing in and taking care of. I was driven by, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm saying. That, I would never say, woman, go to your place. I would never say that. But I communicated that on more than too many times. The issue is, I thought I was right. I'd been deeply committed to being right just pretty much most of my life, because what I never had done, but over the next 10 years, I was able to dig through and come to the surprised awareness that all of my facade was deeply rooted in foundational level insecurity and a sense of brokenness in my life. I had no real solid foundation upon which my life could be built, so I just brought in rocks and sticks and stuff to build the foundation that I had. And it was devastating. I had been pursuing God, quote unquote. I hadn't actually been pursuing God. I'd been pursuing ministry position, but that's how I sort of interpreted it all to be. Because after all, when you're a pastor, you are somebody. Now, when I transitioned out of that pursuit, I transitioned into business in the public realm. Then the company that I went to work for moved us back to Kansas City. And I gone from being a person who could call himself a minister to a man when someone says, well, what do you do? Which is that common thing, to having to say, I sell grocery bags. Isn't that exciting? The point is this: the drive that I had been fueled by was not a drive that was rooted in the reality of Christ within me. It was rooted in the reality that I don't have any foundation, and I need to feel secure, and I want to do good things. And the best place for me to do it is to learn how to be a guy who stands up front and is supposed to have a clue. And so that's what I did.
We left you, so they pulled the trick out of you. Your wife
Yes.
isn't showing up. You realize you've came this close to making your wife a widow. Could you kind of continue on that part of the story? What happened?
Yeah, I was in the hospital for 11 days, but got out and got sent home. Brenda was always gracious. I was not so much. And all I could do for 6 weeks was get up in the morning, make my way slowly down the stairs to my chair that I sat in. And then midway through the morning, I'd go to the bathroom and go to the couch. And then I would go to the table to have some lunch and then back to the chair. And that was my life for 6 weeks. And all of that time, my theological house was beginning to crumble.
Come on.
Because I had to defend God, because God needed to be defended in this situation. And I had to defend myself, because myself definitely needed to be defended in this situation.
Very well said, my friend. Very well said.
And I couldn't, guys, I couldn't find the will or the words to do either. And I began asking God, well, what about this? Why did you let me wind up in this situation here? I nearly widowed my wife, orphaned my kids. And by week 2, frankly, I'm getting pretty pissed. I mean, to be crude. And I'm asking why.
Phase 2, orphaned your kids, bam, bam. That's a 1-2 punch right there. Yeah.
And so I began to grow more courage to accuse God, because initially I I'm still in shock. And so I would wake up in the morning and I would begin to pursue this. And every time God responded, I asked every time God responded. And this is what God, how did you let me wind up there? And here's what God said. Nothing.
Nothing. The famous and common nothing.
Nothing. Thing.
It's one of his most common answers, by the way.
Well, it was.
Yeah.
I was sick by week 5 or 6. By the time I got to the point where I knew I was ready to be released by the surgeon and all the stuff, so I could drive and stuff like that. I'd already come to the conclusion, I can't keep doing this. Dragging my family halfway across the country to starve, and pour my heart out into a situation with people who desperately need to hear some of the things that I have to say, but frankly aren't interested. I can't see any future in an organization or in a context where, if you're not an apostle or a prophet or one who is aspiring to those positions, could you go get me some coffee, please? That is the kind of dynamic that was going on there.
So are you alone in this, or is your wife clued in? Is Brenda clued into this? Or are you just, again, bearing this all on yourself?
I'm about as alone as I ever was.
Yeah.
There were those who cared for me. There were guys that were there. Don Atkin was one of them. Don, I went to Don after I got to where I could drive. And so I couldn't get answers from God. So I went to Don, having coffee with Don. And I said, Don, this is the one interchange that I remember from several that we had. And I said, why did God let this happen to me? Why did God put me in this position? And he said, whoa, 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 whoa. Say that again? Why did God do this to me? Stop right there. And he leaned in and he said, anytime that you think thoughts like that or say phrases like that, you are challenging the integrity and the character of God.
Mm.
And the integrity, the nature, and the character of God. Don't put this on God's shoulders. And that was the beginning of a different level of awareness. I had been giving myself to the thing that my religion had taught me was the most important thing that a Christian could do.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going for that. I had sacrificed my family on the altar of the pursuit of ministry.
Yeah.
I had sacrificed my health because I was not as bright as I needed to be. And my ego was at the heart of it all. And if I'd been a plumber or an electrician or an insurance salesman, all of this could have happened exactly the way it did.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is not a ministry thing. This is a male thing. This is a man thing.
Yeah.
Because our culture has created this myth of what manhood is. And the modern day evangelical American church has bought into that and Christianized it and put it into a different format so
Yes.
that the guy who stands up front and is supposed to have a clue takes on that persona. It was about me.
Yep.
It wasn't about God. It was about choices that I made and choices that I didn't make, decisions that I made and decisions that I didn't make. It was about me. I'm the one.
David, sorry, were you finished that
You're
thought?
finished, yeah.
When we were together, you talked about your coming out, past that, and you had what I thought was just a beautiful one-liner, which, by the
Yeah.
way, I promised you I would steal it from you, and I have stolen it from you and used it several times already, but in the sense of, okay, so David Higginbotham goes through this, Brenda is involved somewhat. The post-apocalyptic moment, you had a one-liner for how you survived or how you managed since then. Would you mind sharing that little one-liner and filling it in a little bit?
Well,
Because
interesting.
I asked them when we were together. I said, "Well, what did you do? How did you make it after that?" And he had a one-liner I think is memorable.
Well, I don't know if it's exactly what you're referring to, other than,
The man walking in the dark.
yeah. I came to the conclusion over a period of time, I began to develop some awareness. I came to the conclusion that virtually all of my life I'd been stumbling around in the dark and bumping into God, because my religion had prepared me for life within a certain context. But I was not living in that context. I had always sort of pushed back against the context because the thing that was in my heart wasn't position. The thing that was in my heart was relationship. And the thing that was in my heart was the possibility that I could live in an awareness of the presence of God with me wherever I went and whenever I went. I hungered for the awareness of God's presence with me. And I came to the conclusion that the God box that I'd been given was seriously flawed, and that I really needed some renovation going on. I needed some renovation. Deconstruction wasn't a term that anybody ever used at this time, but that's exactly what began to happen in my life. And once again, I would have a brother occasionally who could speak into me a bit. Don was a good brother, a dear brother with that, and he and I sort of stayed in touch over a number of years. But once again, I am not throwing rocks at the American evangelical church. I'm pointing out the broken windows that are already there.
Well said. Well said. David, you and Bryon actually have something in common. I know you haven't met, but you both, part of who you are, part of what you do is disciple or, whatever verb you want to do, younger generation men,
Right.
particularly.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the light of lessons learned the hard way, and maybe Bryon, you can engage with David a little bit on this. So what do you now in your present take from that and try to impart is the word, or help the various younger men primarily who you are working with? What's part one of my question is, what are you doing since the epiphany, and how is it received, and does it vary by person to person?
It took me about a decade, took me 5 years just to get past the point where I wasn't pounding my fist on the steering wheel as I'm driving across the Midwest working. It was a blessing that most of my work life in that time period was looking through a windshield.
Bryon doesn't know anything about that.
Excuse me?
I was making a sarcastic remark. Bryon's on the road all the time.
Yeah, down the road. I eventually came to the conclusion that I needed some input. And so I started searching. The internet was sort of developing about that time, or becoming more strong. And I wound up stumbling into a podcast. I don't even think it was called a podcast at that time, by a guy named Wayne Jacobson. And you know Wayne. And he's just, he and the guy that was on there with him, talking about a relationship with God that just rang my bell. That was other than what the box has told me. And I began making a journey at that point in time out of the institutional church in terms of seeing it as a source of life for me. And I was still connected for quite a while. Our kids were still raising our kids, and we were part of a church that had a great children's ministry and school, homeschool support. The box that was there was very, very helpful in our lives at a very, very important time. But eventually
Sure.
came to the conclusion I wasn't that.
Brad, you got any questions or anything you'd like to ask him?
Well, sure. Yeah, your story is fascinating. You know, and the details are definitely proprietary to you. And it's amazing how God uses things to really get us where we want to be. But
Mm.
I had a very similar experience. I actually had the opportunity to go to higher levels and things and see the inner workings. Got shipwrecked through the loss
Mm.
of a first marriage. The denomination I was in, you can't be divorced and stay. So my whole identity
Yes.
was in my preaching, right?
Mm.
And I was a poster boy for that denomination. And then all of a sudden on a Monday, I'm gone.
Yeah.
So I went through my alone period, my darkness time. And then it's like, God, I just want to know I'm okay with you. I don't care anything about ministry anymore. So what does he do? Takes us right back into one of the premier ministries in the United States, private planes, limousines, Christian television.
Yeah.
I'm in the world.
Yeah.
All right. But I had to see it
The
because
big
I didn't
show. Yeah.
know how deeply that was still ingrained in me.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, this is not what you want, is it, Father? And it's like, no. So out of the frying pan in the fire, got involved in apostolic networks, because they were talking some things that was resounding in my spirit that the Lord was showing me. But it's interesting that God has called us Jesus came and did what he did. And he says, look, follow me, take up your cross and follow me. Well, that's death. That's nothing more than death, right? And so the frames and everything, and this is because we're idolaters at heart. David, we get into these forms and these structures and we're like, ooh, this is
Yes.
it. Now, how
Yeah.
can I climb the ladder and the heights and this?
Yeah.
Because this is it. And it's not it. Right. And it was just that
Love
point
it.
of realizing, you called me to die to myself. You haven't given me a new life. You have given me your life. And your life operates in a different economy, in a different way.
Yes. Yes.
And I have to learn that. But while I'm so sorry for your peril and the things that you've had to go through, I'm so happy for you. I'm so blessed by your story because
Yeah.
what we experienced.
It was terrible until it wasn't. I mean, it
Right.
really,
So when did that happen? When did the turn come where you started realizing some things?
well, I was realizing that I spent the better part of a decade getting more and more convinced that I was pretty clueless about a lot of stuff. And it took me a long time to extract the religious connection and the institutional perspective so that I could begin to back up. I didn't crack a Bible for 5 years.
Mm,
The first 5 years, I didn't. I just didn't want anything to do with it. I couldn't. I didn't hate God. I
Yeah.
just couldn't fit what I had experienced and what I was going through with the package that I'd been given.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any question about whether I had actually been in that hospital and had that surgery and had
Yeah.
all the stuff the fallout. I didn't question that, but it didn't fit with a lot of things that came along with the package that my religion had given me. And it was the second 5 years of that 10-year recovery time was me beginning to open my heart up again and beginning to take in, I got the Bible on CD, so I would be writing and I would listen to, the thing that I listened to again and again and again was the Gospel of John. And I did slowly began to pull myself out is that's not a good way to describe it. I began to uncover myself a bit and to stick my head back out from under the covers and to realize there really probably can be a life that is different than the one that I had imagined before.
Mm-hmm.
God invaded me in a just a really profound way. It was in the winter of 2005, almost 10 years later. During that time, I was getting reconnected with my family, or trying to, battling the anger that was just beneath the surface. Just because there was always the slightest provocation could react this, because there was that subterranean anger that was just, I didn't know who to point it toward. And tragically, it got pointed toward my kids and my wife more often than they ever deserved. My kids and I will talk about that season once in a while. They refer to it as the angry years.
Wow.
And I can chuckle.
Wow.
We can chuckle about that now because our relationships have been mended and restored and strengthened. And I didn't lose my family, didn't lose my wife. My wife and I are probably at a better place now than we've been pretty much most of our married life. And that is completely, or let me rephrase that, that is vastly because of her. I would be a single man right now, married to any
Bingo.
other women. Steve, I've heard you talk about that too. It's just my
Yeah.
wife. But you know what? She's a tenacious woman. She is tenacious. She has a will. Once it's locked in, get out of the way. She's going through. And we had stood in front of friends and families 46 years ago and made a vow before God and our friends and family. And the fact that we did that, and she is the woman that she is the overwhelming reason that I'm able to talk to you guys today.
Amen and amen.
There's no telling where I'd be. I'm sure that I wouldn't be here because I would not have had the opportunity, the space given me to recover.
So, David, what was the point? For me, I have a moment where I knew it was God back in my life. It was unavoidable. It was, it was clearly defined.
Right.
It was different than I had ever known God to be. Was there a moment you remember where God's started dealing with you? You responded in a positive way?
Yeah. I can tell you, I can take you to the building and find the room where it happened.
Wow.
Here in Waco. We were living in Kansas City. Our son was graduating from high school. We came to Waco to check out a 1-year kind of discipleship training program kind of thing that was being launched by Antioch Community Church here in Waco. They had a missions conference in February. They've got it. As a matter of fact, it's happening this next week. Usually it's Super Bowl weekend. And we found out about this, and so we packed up the kids and we came to Waco to check this out. It's a 1 year, take a year out after high school kind of thing or whatever. A discipleship training program similar to what YWAM has or something like that. And then they do a missions thing. And Taylor just wanted to take a year off from school. He'd been cranking it all through high school, done really well. And he said, I just need some time. And so we came here, and I was better. I was better, but I wasn't flourishing. And I still had this huge wall that was around my heart. We get there. We didn't get tickets in time to be in the big auditorium where a couple thousand people were. We were in the overflow room with about 350 people or whatever. We get in, get settled down in this place, and the music starts, and we all stand up. It's semi-charismatic kind of situation there. And I stand up, and I do. I wasn't going to make it. And I said to Brenda, I've got to go over here. I'll be back. And so I walk out and go over to the wall in the back corner, and I lean up against the wall, and I do what I'm doing now. Just, I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on. I know this. I'm leaning against this wall, and the worship music that I've heard 1,000 times between the ICU unit and now is washing over me. And when the music stopped, well, that was strange. I go back, sit down with Brenda. We come back the next morning for a morning session. The same thing starts over again. I can feel it come up. I'll be back. And I walk over and I find the spot and I lean against the wall and I just weep for 20 25 minutes or however long that was. And when it was over, I went back. It happened again on Saturday night.
Wow, that's intense, bro. That's
It is.
intense weekend.
But by Saturday night, I knew something was up, and I knew this was a good thing. I don't understand it, but there's an invasion happening, and this is a good thing. And I left Waco, headed back to Kansas City on Sunday afternoon, or maybe it was Monday morning. I don't remember. Knowing that a pivot had happened, and that was the reintroducing of me to. Not the reintroducing, the introducing of me to the loving heart of my Father.
That's oh, dude, that's just a beautiful, beautiful.
All I
Happy
had
ending.
known before that was theory. But
Boy.
it was the beginning point, and that has been 21 years this weekend.
Wow. Wow. Thank you
Every
for
time
sharing
the
that.
Super Bowl, I'm reminded of it every year. The Super Bowl, yes, that's where God met me. And then I met him. And my life is so different now from what it was before. And I want it to be more different going forward than it is now.
My little one-liner about myself sometimes is I know that the 25-year-old me would not be at all interested in anything the 70-year-old me has to say.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that the same for you guys? And in your interactions with others, post recovery experience, how does that change your approach with, say, other young men or young leaders or men and women or marriage? Either of you, if you make a comment on that.
Bryon.
What different, or what fresh fruit are you bringing to your interactions at this point of time that would be different than 40-year-old you?
For me, it's the validation without performance.
That's pretty profound.
I was the last of 7 kids, all of them great athletes and very intelligent. So what the heck am I going to do, to get attention? And that means I have to perform. And so I just carried that into my relationship and ministry, because that was, and here's the key word, that was my identity, right?
Yeah.
So when the Holy Spirit showed me that Jesus came, was baptized, and was entering into the mode of, repentance for us, the changing of our mind, not the, gee, I'm sorry, but really the beginning of the transformation of our mind. He hears the Father say, "This is my beloved Son on whom I'm well pleased." He goes and leaves the Father for 40 days and 40 nights to deal with the adversary. And the entire framework of those temptations was to take away the operating platform of sonship, where he knew that he was validated. Prove yourself, prove yourself, prove yourself. If you're really, if you're the Son of God, if you really think he loves you, then show me, right? And Jesus didn't fall for it. So when I saw that, that was the huge wooden doors on the big iron hinges that just swung open. And on the other side, there's God as a Father just saying, I love you. And that validation really set me free. And that's what I tell, for instance, I've got, and Thaddeus, right? Steve, he's an
Yes.
African-American man. Long story. We've walked together 16, 17 years now. But when I first met him, he's a 6th generation jazz trumpet player. And so, I told him, I said, look, you'll always be able to play that trumpet, right? That can't be your identity. You've got to have the Christ-like character to sustain what it is God has for you, to enter into what God has for you. But
Great example.
also what it's done for me is, in dealing with young men, I don't control them. If they leave, I let them go. But when they come back, I embrace them like nothing ever happened. And you know what happens? They say, you know what? You were right. This is what I learned. I'm like, Father was right. And you just got to give that leeway. You've got to give that room for them to go and do, because I had to do the same thing. And my life was so devastating. I mean, to the point where I didn't care about being on the planet anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't, if this is what I get, God, for serving you. I mean, I was the prodigal and the elder son, all in the parable of the misunderstood father. Both of them. And I was just like, I didn't know what it was. So
I have a bit of a loaded question, and I suppose this could be pushed to cultic phenomena if we went too far with this question. But for both of you guys, how much of do you think of what we've been sharing today is caught through proximity to us as humans, and how much is taught? I'm not so sure what we're talking about today is taught into people. I suppose there is an element, but how do you transmit what we've talked today to the folks that you've I mean, you just gave a great example, Bryon. And I guess what I'm asking for seems to me this you're not going to learn this in a classroom.
Right.
This is going to be learned through proximity with another human being. Do you guys comment on that?
Yes, I as I began to see the turnaround in my own life, as I began to have a sense of being healed and being growing into that, I had to I had to fight the temptation every month. Had to fight it, and I would sometimes catch myself in the middle of doing it and then have to fight it, and that is putting together the world's best discipleship program that'll change the lives.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Oh yeah! Right.
And it was I kept this isn't going to work. No,
and that's
this is
that's what I was gonna that's what I was gonna say, because
that's
there is
brilliant.
no form or structure. It's life. Jesus didn't take the disciples through 6 weeks of Bible verse, right? He said, "Look, follow. Let's walk together. Let's walk together."
Come on, right.
What that means to me, in the nature and the character of the Father, I've given thousands of dollars to young men with no expectation of return. I've given thousands of hours, and I'm being conservative, with no expectation of return, because you've got to be there in their life, right? And I mean, I just got all that dinging you've been hearing. I just got a text from one of them saying, "Look, I need to know if I'm thinking right and acting right. Do you have a minute?" I'm like, "I will in about 45 minutes." Right. So it's the context of life, because everybody wants to, but with David's story, you can't get out of your own way, because you've got all these
Come on, well said.
into these structures and into these things, and saying, "This is it. This is how you do it. This is how you rise. Look at me." Right. Well, when Jesus said, "Look at me," he was like this. He's like
come on.
stretched on the cross, dying. Right. And so it's in the context of that life and in that failures. And everybody thinks, the brother thought he was valuable because he knew how to blow a trumpet. Phenomenal talent. But brother, that's not why God cherishes you and loves you and has a destiny and a future for you to enter into. And it's just in the context of life. There is no discipleship program.
That's good.
And quite honestly, I mean, church structures make membership programs. But when God tagged me, he said, "Look, you preached, millions of people on this planet, right? But you've never discipled one soul. What do you do with that?" It's like, "I don't even know what you're talking about, man." So if you're
that's a worker.
Yeah, if you're bringing this to me, you have to perform it. I can't perform it, because if I get my hands on it, it was the same thing with the house church thing. I never asked for a house church network. And all of a sudden I'm surrounded, and it's nationwide. And God's like, "You want in the center of this?" I'm like, "No, I don't want anything to do with it." Right. And so, because it's not a form and a structure, but in our very nature, we're idolaters, and we like to build things with our own hands to get the credit for it and point to it and say, "This is it."
Yeah.
Because it reinforces my view of who I am.
Correct.
Or who I hope to be.
Yeah.
And I was discipled into a lifestyle and a mindset and a paradigm that put me into that ICU unit.
Yeah.
That was the impact in my life. Everyone else is going to experience the same thing. But I was pursuing after an understanding of what it meant to walk with God in my mind that brought me to that place. And so the thing that I do most often whenever I end up in conversations with guys is ask questions.
Yeah, me too.
One of the first ones that I ask is, "How honest do you want me to be?"
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
and I know they're going to say, well, I want you to be completely honest.
yeah.
I know that, but I
Yeah,
still want the
yeah.
verbal permission to smack them
Right.
around a little bit. But
Yeah.
the real life expression of Christ in me is always going to carry the aroma of agape.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's always going to carry the aroma of agape. And
Well said.
that thought has totally changed the way that I approach what I would used to have called ministry.
Yeah.
Very well said.
It's just, if what I'm doing isn't bringing the aroma of agape, then this is not ministry at all.
Right.
It might be teaching. I might be teaching something, or I might be whatever. Ministry is when loving God and loving others comes together.
Well said.
And when
Well
that
said.
happens, people's hearts are touched and changed.
That's
And
right.
the Spirit of God is released within us because He's going, yes, this is what I want.
Mhm.
And
Well said.
God's Spirit works in amazing ways with people, not according to my agenda or my timetable.
Very well said. Very
And
well said.
the last thing I want to say
Sure.
is this. I'm at a place in my life that I could not have been, I don't think. Knowing me and knowing my track record up to that point, I'm at a place in my life that I could not have been apart from waking up in that ICU unit. Because in my life, it took me hitting that wall to getting my attention that I'm not all that in a bag of chips.
So we think it's so cool, don't we? It's like, God, anything you can do. God.
Oh yeah.
You guys are going. Okay. All right. And so then when it happens, it's like woo-hoo, you know, but he just does it, and it's to his glory and to his power. So listen, we're almost an hour in. David, we're gonna have to have you back.
I know this is a lot longer than I thought
So
we
it's
could go.
it's good to hear what you've come through, but now we'd like to hear what you're doing, where you're at now, what's going on. So we'll do another podcast with you. But man, thanks for sharing your story, and
Love to do
Steve,
that.
thanks for dragging him in here.
Sure. There were some gold bars dropped today for folks who have ears to hear, and thanks for being on, David. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, you guys have made a real deposit in my life just by doing what you're doing here. And I look forward to continuation of that. You're dear brothers, and I bless you.
Well, I
We
can
bless you too,
foresee
David.
a Bros in the Basement road trip down to Wacko, down, have dinner and some prayer and some.
That would be great. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and I'll take you out and show you where the Branch Davidians to their compound.
You know what? I'm good.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's Chip and Joanne for one group of people, and the Branch Davidians for the weirdos. So
yeah, no doubt.
I know what that's like. Guys, thank you so much. I'm
Thank you, Dave.
honored to be
Thank you,
here, and
brother.
I truly
Thank
appreciate the opportunity
you
to
for
share
your
with you.
perseverance and your softness to Father's touch.
Yeah.
I mean, it took you a while, but you got there, right, brother? So
Oh, yeah.
that's awesome. Good stuff.
All right, gang.
Okay,
All right.
guys.
Everybody,
Thank you.
thanks for joining us. We just got one more thing to say.
Jesus,
y'all.
y'all.
Y'all. Later.
Those brothers in the basement, Jesus, y'all.